as I said, I went to Harvard. I studied applied math and computer science, and it was all very intoxicating. That coming from Midwest Rochester, sort of the Midwest, feels like the Midwest, and then you come and you learn about New York and all of these new things that you never really had been exposed to, and so it's very exciting to sort of make a transition into a whole new sort of world of possibilities. And so I was very excited when I left college and got a job as a computer consultant working for Arthur Andersen in New York. And it seemed like I was, right out of college making more money than I could even imagine compared to like anybody in Rochester. And I did that, and it was also very exciting because we were working on new things, modeling these fancy new financial securities that were just being developed at that time. So we were like right at the cutting edge of a lot of new technology. I moved from there to work for the Boston Consulting Group. For First Boston, which is an investment bank, became Credit Suisse, First Boston, working more on the front lines, underwriting new securities and also doing more financial modeling, and sort of starting to feel like, well, there's nothing really tangible here. What am I, is this really what I want to be doing? I think I'll go to business school and get a broader exposure, and maybe that will lead me to where I really want to be. So I went to Wharton. I came out and worked for the Boston Consulting Group. I got that right. And I thought, well, this is also going to be great because it's going to give me exposure to all kinds of different businesses. I'm definitely going to find something that like really piques my interest. And I did, I worked in a lot of areas. Some were finance, some were manufacturing, some were technology. And all along, I'm like, this is not quite right. I don't know what's going on here. And all along, I was sort of like dabbling, and I was taking an acting class here. When I was in business school, I was in the Wharton Follies. I was like doing that on the side. I was doing but those were just like, sort of squeezing it in between. And after I worked for BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, I went to work for American Express in a strategy function there. They had an internal strategic planning group. And again, I was like, oh, well, I'm sure something in American Express, huge company, there's going to be something that I'm going to find that's going to really call to me, and I'm going to find it and I'll be super happy. And I worked on all these different things. I kept going like, this isn't right. And then one day, a woman who I worked with, who was an alum from McKinsey, another big strategy consulting firm, who was, fantastic. She was smart. She was great with people. She was organized. She was a person that people were saying, like, this person is going to be the future CEO of American Express. Just keep an eye on this one. She comes to my office one day and she said, Bruce, I'm leaving Amex. And I was like, oh my God, what, where are you going? I figured she must have gotten some huge job at, MasterCard or Visa or something. And she says, I'm going to go paint. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, yeah, I've been studying painting and I just love it. And I decided that I want to do that full time. So I'm leaving Amex. I'm going to be a painter. And it kind of like blew my mind, because how could this person who is, clearly on this track and climbing this ladder and, has this huge, clear future, just jump off and do that? And it completely sort of ripped apart my construct of, sort of what you're supposed to do and what you have to do and all that. And I had been, thinking about leaving American Express and trying to figure out what the next step was because I hadn't found, the perfect position there. And I had participated in sort of a career discovery program, which was called What Color's Your Parachute, which was popular back in that era, to try to find, like the career that suits you the best. And as part of that, you write essays about things from your past that, where you felt, fulfilled and accomplished and so on. And then you would read them aloud to a group. And one of the essays that I wrote about was when I had done Fiddler on the Roof, actually, my junior year in high school. And then actually, and again, my senior year in college, both times playing Tevye. And I wrote this essay about this, and just afterwards, the group was like, "Oh my God, like when you read that, you changed, like your face lit up. You were like so excited just reading about it. It's like, have you ever thought about going into acting?" And I was like, "No, that's ridiculous. Who would, how could I do that?" And they're like, "Why not?" Lots of reasons. Anyway, so the seed had been planted. And then one day after my friend at Amex decided to leave, and I was sitting there with my spreadsheets of like different jobs, the pros and cons that I was considering doing afterwards, and thinking of what interviews I was going to go on and so on. And my wife said to me, "Put that away for a minute." She's like, "If you were going to do anything in the world that you could do, forget about your pros and cons, like, what would you do? How would you spend your time?" And I was like, "Well, if I could do anything, I would act, but I can't do that." And she said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, obviously because you work at night, you never know if you're going to be working, the pay stinks, you have to travel, all these things." She's like, "Yeah, but when I asked you what you wanted to do, you didn't even have to think about it. You just knew. How could you like ignore that?" And I thought, and I said, it's kind of a sensible conclusion. So that's when I really started looking into it and thinking maybe I could actually do this. And within a couple of months, I left American Express and I started on a summer program at the William Esper Studio, which is a great acting program in New York, which of course I had found through great research. And I spent 2 months there, and when that summer finished, I was invited to join the 2-year program at Esper, studying with Bill Esper himself. And that was a life-changing experience. Bill is one of the greatest American acting teachers. He had been the head of the Rutgers Mason Gross School for many years, and had studied with Sanford Meisner, who is one of the sort of the major founders of the American acting technique, sort of along with Lee Strasberg and I'm blanking on the other one, Stella Adler. The three of them, Stella Adler, Lee Strasberg, and Sandy Meisner, really composed what was the group theater they had studied with Stanislavski, and brought back the more realistic approach to acting that came from the Russians and brought it to America and modified it in different ways. And that's where Esper came from. So I spent 2 years with him, and then another year in his master class and studying Shakespeare and movement and various other things, and then started working in theater and some film and a little TV, and that's the rest is history. And actually, Bill just passed away in January, and has left a huge legacy of actors who have studied with him. Many people that you will know, and he's just one of the most gifted teachers in the history of American acting.